You might look at the Italian Greyhound on your sofa, shivering under a blanket, looking like a fragile piece of porcelain, and think they need constant protecting. But here's the thing. That delicate creature is actually a ruthless, aerodynamic predator with a lineage that predates the Roman Empire. This isn't a modern designer dog. It's a 5,000-year-old biological masterpiece that slept in the beds of pharaohs. To truly understand the quirky, velcro dog in your home today, you have to look back at the royals who loved them first. It turns out, their history explains everything about their behavior. If you want to understand the deep history behind your best friend, hit that subscribe button for more untold stories. The story begins in the cradle of civilization. If you travel to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, deep inside the tombs of the pharaohs, you find the first real evidence of your dog's ancestors. Archaeologists have uncovered mummified remains of small sighthounds dating back to 3000 BC. These weren't stray dogs scavenging for scraps. They were mummified with the same care as the royals they lived with. The skeletal structure is undeniable. Deep chests, tucked abdomens, and long, narrow skulls. They were miniature versions of the larger Tisam hunting dogs, bred down to hunt small game like jerboa in the open desert. They were built for speed from day one, and they didn't stay in Egypt. A strong historical thread suggests that Queen Cleopatra herself is responsible for the breed's migration. After Julius Caesar conquered Egypt in 48 BC, legend says Cleopatra presented him with puppies of this miniature sighthound type. It was a diplomatic gift that brought the breed to the heart of the Roman Empire. Before they fully took over Rome, these dogs were already making an impression across the Mediterranean. The Greeks called them vertragus, a word derived from swift foot. The historian Arrian wrote about these small coursing dogs, describing them as swift hunters that tracked by sight rather than scent. You can even see them on ancient Greek pottery, depicting the myth of Actaeon. The dogs painted on those vases are undeniably Italian greyhounds, slender, agile, and elegant. But while the Greeks admired their athleticism, the Romans turned them into the ultimate status symbol. They refined the Egyptian imports into a distinct toy sighthound that became a fixture in the resort towns of the empire. We know they lived in luxury because the evidence was literally frozen in time. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, burying Pompeii in ash, it preserved a snapshot of daily life. Excavations have found the remains of these petite hounds inside the villas of the wealthy. Note that detail. They were found inside the homes, not in the yards or stables. They were indoor companions 2,000 years ago. But the most fascinating piece of evidence is the famous cave canem mosaic found at the house of the tragic poet. You've likely seen it, a black dog with the inscription, "Beware of the dog." For centuries, people assumed this was a warning about a ferocious guard dog. But if you look at the mosaic with a dog trainer's eye, that interpretation falls apart. The dog in the image isn't aggressive. Its front legs are lowered and its hindquarters are raised in the air. That is a classic playbow. It's a universal canine signal that says, "I want to play, not I want to bite." This leads to a theory that makes perfect sense to anyone who owns an Italian Greyhound today. The warning, "Beware of the dog," likely wasn't warning visitors that the dog would hurt them. It was warning visitors not to hurt the dog. In a villa full of heavy traffic, a 5-pound Italian Greyhound is a tripping hazard. The master of the house was essentially saying, "Watch your step, don't crush the tiny dog." It shows that the anxiety about their fragility isn't new. It's been part of owning this breed since the days of the Roman Empire. They were loved, pampered, and protected, setting the stage for their next evolution in the palaces of Europe. While the Romans loved them, the breed truly found its golden age when it moved into the palaces of Europe. By the time of the Renaissance, the Italian Greyhound had become the ultimate accessory for the aristocracy. You have to understand the context here. In a world where dogs were tools used for herding sheep, guarding property, or hunting for the table, owning a dog that did absolutely nothing was a display of immense power. These dogs were useless in the most luxurious sense. They were bred solely for beauty, companionship, and the aesthetic pleasure of their silhouette. If you look at the paintings from this era, like those by Veronese or Giotto, you see the exact same dog that is sleeping on your lap right now. The curve of the spine, the deep chest, the delicate legs. They haven't changed in 500 years. They were living art, designed to drape elegantly over the velvet robes of kings and queens. But the most compelling proof of this bond comes from Prussia. Frederick the Great, the king known for his military genius and stoic philosophy, had one weakness. He was obsessed with his Italian greyhounds. He kept dozens of them at his palace in Sanssouci, but his favorite was a little female named Bici. Her story reads like a movie script. During the Second Silesian War in 1745, specifically at the Battle of Soor, the king's baggage train was captured by the Austrian army. General Nadasti seized the spoils, and among them was Bici. She was taken as a prisoner of war and presented to Frederick's arch-enemy, the Austrian Empress Maria Theresa. Now, usually, that would be the end of the dog. But upon realizing who the dog belonged to and seeing how distressed the little animal was, the Empress did something unexpected. She returned Bici to Frederick. The historical accounts of their reunion are touching. Legend says that when Bici was brought back to the king's tent, she did not just wag her tail. She leaped onto his neck and refused to let go. The hardened warrior, who had led thousands of men into battle, broke down and wept. He later wrote to his sister that he was ashamed a dog could affect his soul so deeply, but the faithfulness of the poor creature had overwhelmed him. This bond went beyond life. Frederick's ultimate wish was to be buried on the terrace of his palace, right alongside his dogs. His will was explicit. I want to be buried there, among my dogs. But when he died in 1786, the people in charge ignored him. They thought it was undignified for a king to rest next to his pets, so they buried him in a church instead. It took 2 centuries for his wish to be granted. In 1991, after the reunification of Germany, Frederick's remains were finally moved to Sanssouci. Today, if you visit his grave, you will see a simple stone slab, and right next to it are the grave markers of Bici and his other Italian greyhounds. He is finally resting where he always wanted to be. Russia's Catherine the Great was just as devoted. Her favorite Italian greyhound, Zamira, lived better than most of the human population. Zamira did not sleep on the floor. She slept in a cradle lined with pink silk in the Empress's own bedchamber. She accompanied Catherine on her daily walks and was essentially the shadow of the most powerful woman in the world. Catherine loved this dog so much that she commissioned a life-sized porcelain figure of Zamira from the Imperial Porcelain Factory. That statue still sits in the Peterhof Palace today. It is a masterpiece of naturalistic art, capturing the alertness and the fragility that you recognize in your own dog. When Zamira died, she was buried in a dedicated pet cemetery with an epitaph that read, "Her only God was her mistress." It perfectly captures that intense single-minded devotion, the velcro nature that defines the breed to this day. But this royal obsession eventually led to a crisis that nearly wiped the breed off the map. By the late 19th century, the Victorian era brought a new trend that threatened the genetic integrity of these dogs: the craze for toy breeds. The fashion of the day dictated that smaller was always better. Breeders, driven by this trend rather than the health of the animal, started making disastrous decisions. In an attempt to miniaturize the Italian Greyhound even further, they began crossing the bloodline with English toy terriers. The results were catastrophic for the breed's identity. The elegant aerodynamic sighthound began to disappear. In its place appeared a degenerate version with a round, apple-shaped skull, bulging eyes, and a flat back. They lost the characteristic roach, that beautiful S-curve in their spine that acts as a spring for running. Worse, they lost their drive. These new crosses were trembling, neurotic creatures that had lost the hunting instinct entirely. By the turn of the 20th century, the true Italian Greyhound was on the brink of extinction, replaced by a fragile parlor trick that could barely trot, let alone gallop. While European breeders were busy ruining the dog to fit a fashion trend, a king in southern Africa recognized exactly what they were destroying. This is one of the most telling stories in the breed's history because it validates their true nature. King Lobengula, the ruler of the Ndebele people in modern-day Zimbabwe, encountered the breed through European traders. Lobengula came from a warrior culture that deeply valued cattle. In his society, cows were not just livestock. They were the primary currency, the measure of a man's status, and the key to survival. When Lobengula saw an Italian Greyhound run, he didn't see a lapdog. He saw a supreme hunter. He was so captivated by the dog's speed and agility that he made a trade that shocked the Europeans. He exchanged 200 head of cattle for a single Italian Greyhound. To put that in perspective, 200 cows represented a king's ransom. It was enough wealth to buy vast tracts of land or seal major political alliances. And he traded it all for one 10-pound dog. Lobengula understood something the Victorian breeders had forgotten. This wasn't a toy. It was a biological machine built for the chase. He recognized the value of a predator that could outmaneuver game on the plains. Fortunately for us, the pendulum swung back before it was too late. A group of purist breeders in England realized the damage being done by the terrier crosses. They started a movement to restore the breed to its original Renaissance form. They were helped by the matriarch of the dog fancy herself, Queen Victoria. While she is famous for her spaniels, she was also a dedicated owner of Italian Greyhounds, including a favorite named Nero. Her patronage helped legitimize the push to save the true type. The founding of the Italian Greyhound Club in 1900 marked the turning point. They worked tirelessly to breed out the appleheads and the bug eyes, bringing back the sighthound curves and the hunting spirit. They saved the breed just in time, because to understand why King Lobengula was willing to pay such a high price, you have to look under the skin. You have to look at the biology that makes this dog the Ferrari of the canine world. To see why this dog is worth a fortune in cattle, you have to watch it run. The Italian Greyhound possesses a biological gear that most other dogs simply don't have. It's called the double suspension rotary gallop. This is the exact same gait used by the fastest land animal on Earth, the cheetah. When a normal dog runs, one foot is usually touching the ground. But when your Italian Greyhound hits top gear, there are two distinct moments in every single stride where their body is completely airborne. They literally fly. They crunch their body into a tight ball, bringing their back legs past their front ears, and then explode outward into a full stretch. Unlike a horse that uses a transverse gallop, the Italian Greyhound uses a rotary sequence, which provides insane stability for sharp turns. This mechanism allows a 12-pound animal to clock speeds of 25 to 28 miles per hour. But speed is useless if you crash. That's where their eyes come in. Because of their narrow aerodynamic skull, their eyes are placed on the sides of their head, giving them a 270-degree field of vision. While you can only see what's in front of you, they can essentially see behind their own head while running at full speed. It's a superpower designed for coursing rabbits in the desert, allowing them to track erratic movement on the horizon without breaking stride. However, this extreme specialization comes with a heavy price tag. You need to understand that this is a race car, not a tank. To achieve that speed, nature stripped away everything heavy, including bone density. Their legs are often compared to the wings of a bird. The radius and ulna are incredibly fine, which makes them terrifyingly prone to breaks. This is the royal secret that every modern owner learns, often the hard way. A jump off a sofa that a Labrador wouldn't even notice can snap an Italian Greyhound's leg like a dry twig. They often believe they can fly, but their skeletons can't always handle the landing. This biological stripping goes even deeper. They have almost zero body fat, often less than 17%. In the wild, this makes them lean hunters. In a modern veterinary clinic, it makes them a medical puzzle. Most anesthetics are lipid-soluble, meaning they bind to fat cells. When you put an Italian Greyhound under anesthesia, the drugs have nowhere to go but the bloodstream, which can lead to a fatal overdose if the vet isn't careful. Their livers also lack specific enzymes needed to metabolize these drugs. It is a fragility built into their very DNA. This lack of body fat explains the other trait they are famous for, the velcro phenomenon. If you own one, you know they don't just sit near you. They burrow under your skin. They sleep under the covers and cling to you like a second shadow. While it feels like love, and it is also a survival mechanism. They are small, hairless engines that lose heat rapidly. They need your warmth to survive. This intensity has a flip side, the infamous IG scream. Because they are so bonded to their pack, the isolation distress can be severe, resulting in a high-pitched shriek that sounds almost human. To it, this ancient creature has found a new kingdom, the internet. In the last decade, the breed has exploded in popularity, largely thanks to digital icons. You had Jenna Marbles and her dog Kermit, or Sir Met, who showed the world the neurotic, crying, hilarious reality of living with these dogs, proving they aren't just stoic statues. Then came Tika the Iggy, who turned the breed's natural elegance into high fashion, becoming a global style icon. They have transitioned from the painted portraits of the Renaissance to the vertical screens of TikTok, remaining the ultimate muse. The Italian Greyhound is a biological masterpiece of contradiction. It is a wolf in the clothing of a lamb, a predator disguised as a toy. Its history is a 5,000-year journey from the sands of Egypt to the sofas of suburbia, passing through the hands of the most powerful humans to ever live. If you want to understand the deep history behind your best friend, hit that subscribe button for more untold stories.